The United States and China have extended a truce in their trade war until November, postponing massive tariff hikes just hours before they were due to come into force. In a statement posted on the White House website, President Trump said that during discussions, China has taken significant steps towards remedying non-reciprocal trade arrangements and addressing the concerns of the United States relating to economic and national security matters. Well, it's the second time that Mr. Trump has delayed imposing tariffs. He did something similar in May. The move allows the world's two largest economies another 90 days to reach an agreement. China's state news agency Xinhua says this means the 10% tariffs on US imports will remain in place. Many Chinese exports to the US currently face 30% tariffs. Well, our North America correspondent Peter Bowes has reaction on the deadline extension from the US.
This isn't a huge surprise. Certainly the mood music of the last few weeks in terms of negotiations between China and Washington had been sounding more optimistic, and the fact that there is now this 3-month further suspension, I think, will be certainly welcomed by many retailers in this country, and it's also welcomed, of course, in a broader context, because it does suggest that some meaningful progress is being made. And in the statement from the White House, you just referred to it, there is, I think, a tone there that is perhaps more optimistic than it's been for some time. We don't have the detail in terms of how those negotiations are panning out, but it certainly suggests that Donald Trump believes that by suspending for another 90 days that he could reach a significant deal. I mentioned in terms of retailers in the United States, it's come at a positive time for them, because there'd been a lot of concern as we move towards the end of the year and towards the holiday season and Christmas, when there's generally an influx of Chinese goods into the United States. There'd been many fears amongst retailers that they would have to bear the brunt of any tariffs, huge triple-digit tariffs, and that, of course, they would have to pass on to their consumers.
To Bowes there for us. Well, let's just recap some of the trade figures between the US and China. US government figures show that US imports of Chinese goods in June were around half of the figure compared to a year earlier. And in the first 6 months of this year, the US imported $165 billion worth of goods from China. That is down roughly 15% from the same time last year. And during that same period, over the first half of this year, American exports to China were down by around 20% year on year. Well, let's speak to our China correspondent, Laura Bicker. Laura, do we know any details as to why this extension has happened? Many will, of course, be relieved that it has, and where the potential areas for agreement might be.
So first of all, during negotiations between China and the United States, we had heard those negotiations were going quite well, that a 90-day truce was quite likely, so it's come as no surprise. However, when you say and when you ask about a longer term deal, certainly during those early phases of negotiations, there are several sticking points. The first is China's stranglehold over rare earth minerals. Now, these are the minerals that are needed for everything from the gadgets you have in your pocket, your iPhone, for instance, to the likes of making a car or making a wind turbine. They are necessary. China controls 70% of the world's supply of rare earth minerals. Therefore, it has the leverage over the United States. But China wants something too. It wants access to advanced computer chips. And Donald Trump has also been limiting these advanced computer chips sales to China. So when there is a potential for a deal, those are the two main sticking points. There are many others that the two countries need to come to an agreement on. However, we've kicked the can down the road. We've got another 90 days, and November the 10th will be the deadline that now many factories, suppliers, shops, retailers will be watching to see what comes next.
And Laura, to what degree had China prepared for this second Trump presidency by, in any case, preparing its businesses, its factories, by diversifying its global market?
I think you and I have talked about this quite a few times. Now, Trump 1.0, Donald Trump's first term, obviously that became an issue with regards to the first trade war. China has learnt real lessons. It went away, it looked at where it was selling to the United States, it looked at where it was vulnerable, and it decided to diversify its business away from selling simply to the United States. Now, so about only 20% of its business is with the US. It does a lot more business, a lot more export and import business with what we call the global south. So countries right across South America, Southeast Asia. And that is where China may see key, because not only has it learned from the last trade war, it's learned from this one. And I think if we're looking towards the future, China may now see the US as a very uncertain market.
Laura Bicker, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed.